You can introduce yourself really quickly, and we'll go ahead and put up your bio up on our screen so everybody can see what amazing, amazing work you've really done so far.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. As Jana said, my name is Madeline, and I'm a senior software engineer at Pinterest, primarily working on our shopping efforts, which I don't know if you all have kept up with what's going on with all the social media companies and their shopping efforts, but people are rolling back and rethinking everything. So I've actually been on maternity leave for the past year, and I'm now getting back into the swing of things. And it's been a really interesting time to come back to work because everything's changing. So throughout my time at Pinterest, I've worked on all parts of the product. And I actually started our Latinx ERG in 2016 when I joined the company. And we've grown it to over 300 members all over the world. So that's been pretty awesome. So being a Latina at the company has been like a really defining thing for myself and my career there.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Madeline. So you are a superwoman in two ways, essentially, a mama full-time, and an awesome software engineer. So that's really special. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. And we are very excited to get into conversation with you today. Moving on, we have Rudy Melendez. Rudy is a director of technical operations over at Policy Genius and a good friend of mine. You might also notice he shares a last name with somebody here at Cedar. So, you know, Rudy, if you can go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks to Cedar for having me. Rudy also have a Dominican background as well. Like the bio says, Director of Technical Ops over at Policy Genius. And in that role, we're an internal function, right? And our mission is to support the needs of the business through tech, but also to constantly innovate and solve novel problems that we run into. And so we're constantly looking at what the goals of our other teams are and making sure that they're supported and that we can provide the tools that they need to, to get there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rudy. We're super excited to chat with you today.
Thank you.
Of course. And moving right along, last but certainly not least, we have Andrea Rodriguez, who is a project manager over at Twitter for IDEA, which stands for Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Accessibility. Welcome, Andrea. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited and honored to be here with everyone today. So my name is Andrea Rodriguez. My pronouns are she, her, and for a visual description, I am a Latinx woman wearing a gray sweatshirt with a blurred background behind me. And as Janice mentioned, I'm a program manager at Twitter, leading Inclusion Network Group programs, which is inclusive of our business resource groups at the company, as well as affinity groups, and also lead strategic initiatives on our inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility team as well. And New York City is my home.
Hey, love a New Yorker. Welcome, Andrea. It's such a pleasure to have you here today. So we're going to actually jump right into the meat and bones of this, which is our panel. First question is, what has your career path looked like, and what are some of the various positions that you held in tech? We'll start with Madeline.
I should unmute myself. All right. So I'll start with, I always say that I should have become a software engineer when I was like 12 years old. And I'm going to age myself here, but I'll talk about it anyway. When I was in high school, I was really into decking out my MySpace page. So who here has had a MySpace page?
Oh,
Raise your virtual hand if you have.
Those HTML codes, the songs, love it. Bringing back memories.
Yeah, exactly. I absolutely love decking out my MySpace profile. And I remember when MySpace wasn't cool anymore, I was looking for ways to deck out my Facebook page. And obviously Facebook is standard, there's no HTML code. And I was really disappointed because I was like, all these profiles look the same. But then I just moved on with my life. I didn't realize that there were people who were building web pages the same way that I was building out my MySpace profile. And I forgot about it for so many years I went to college and I majored in economics. And the reason for that was because I didn't know what I wanted to major in. I just knew that I wanted to have as many options as possible. So I looked for the majors that would offer me, like, oh, if you want to go to law school, apparently economics majors do really well on the LSAT, or I could go into finance, or I could go into marketing, anything. So I chose that major because I had a deadline from my financial aid office, and I just wanted as many options as possible. I think it's so awesome that now we tell kids that they can be multiple things. We don't ask them, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Just one thing, right? Like they can do so many things. And that's kind of how I felt when I was in college. I want to do so many things. I don't know what they are, but I just want to have those options. And in college, I didn't know anyone that was a software engineer. And even if I maybe met someone by chance, I never thought of majoring in computer science because I didn't think it was something that I would be interested in. I had never seen anyone that looked like me pursuing that career, or in any of those classes, or in the engineering building whenever I happened to pass by it. So it actually took me all the way until my senior year when I was studying abroad. And I met two women in Turkey who were studying computer science. And at the same time, I was spending some time with friends over there who only access the internet through their mobile devices. And because I was studying abroad there, they would see me on my computer pretty often. And one of my friends actually asked me, hey, you're on your computer a lot. Can you build me a website so I can run my business online as well as in person? And I didn't know how to do that, but I was like, well, yeah, he's right. I kind of do spend a lot of my time on my computer. And I actually don't know what I want to do when I get back to the US. So could I build a website? And I took a class online. I was like intro to HTML and CSS on Code Academy. And I realized I made the connection between what I was doing on MySpace, literally HTML and CSS, and like building websites. And I like to say that from there, it just kind of took off. So I came back to the US, I applied to programs, boot camps, basically, where I could study software engineering right after graduation. I got a job in marketing, but nights and weekends, I was doing this intense boot camp to try to learn how to code, and did really well there. And then I accepted an apprenticeship at Pinterest. We were the first class. Three people from New York flew out to San Francisco, and they were trying this out as part of their diversity and inclusion program, and just trying to get people from non-traditional tech backgrounds into tech. It worked out. Now the program employs like 30 people a year, and all three of us converted to full-time. And yeah, I've been a software engineer ever since, and it's been really, truly amazing.
Madeline, that is such an incredible story. It proves that you really never know where your journey is going to take you, right? As a young teenager, messing around with your MySpace, going into college, and not really knowing what you want to do, but having that pressure to decide on something, to a travel experience where the most unlikely interaction would really set the trajectory for the rest of your career path. So I think that's such an amazing journey. Thank you so much for sharing that. So I'm going to move on to Andrea. Andrea, same question. What has your career in tech look like, and what inspired you to kind of get into the tech industry to begin with?
Definitely. So my career path has not always followed a straight line. I will be the first to say that. Believe it or not, I actually, after graduating high school, I was pursuing a career in fashion. So big detour there. But nevertheless, I firmly believe everything truly does happen for a reason, in the way that it has spanned throughout, the duration of my career. And I've made two major transitions throughout that span of that time. So in each one of them, I found that each of the skills I developed led me to prepare well and successfully to pivot into new roles and opportunities. So my first tech job was actually in operations at the time when I don't believe I've shared, but I started off at Uber as a contractor, working to drive sign up drivers on the streets of New York City. And it just eventually became something that, I felt there was such a bigger mission in what we were doing. And it led me to pursue further opportunities in our operations org. So continued, a career trajectory through that, eventually became a people team manager, And then I started getting further involved into D&I initiatives at the time at Uber. So that really was that catalyst for me to move into making a career pivot into a formal DEI role. So that's really like where it led in. And if I were to choose what has been the most formative piece of my career experience to date, has been probably the leadership experience as a team manager during my time at former companies, really to be in a position where I can be a disruptor and help drive lasting change, as well as like nurture the strengths and talents of my team and build teams committed to achieving common goals as well. So it's followed a very non-traditional path, but nevertheless very happy with the outcome as well.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. It's interesting because there's like that common theme there of having this like non-traditional ending up where you didn't think you were going to end up. And I think it's so cool that you were at Uber at a time where you were literally boots on the ground trying to get people on board. Imagine now Uber, this like huge entity where it kind of like sells itself. So that's really cool. You must have seen a lot of transition there as well. So that's awesome. And Rudy, certainly last but not least, what brought you into the tech world?
Yeah, so it was very similar to Madeline, where, you know, when I was a kid, I got a computer in the 90s, like a lot of 90s kids, and I was, you know, tinkering a lot with it and taking out hard drives and things like that. And I just really enjoyed it. I initially wanted to be a doctor, and, you know, after playing around with computers, I think it made more sense, and I just enjoyed it so much. So that naturally led me into an undergrad in computer science. After graduation, I went to work at a photo studio, writing some code for a database called FileMaker. I don't think it's around anymore nowadays, but I did that for a little bit. But then I got a call from a company that I did some internships with while I was in college, and a place that I really loved while I was there, to work as a service coordinator for their IT group. And, you know, again, I loved it there so much that I immediately accepted. And in that service coordinator role, I scheduled dispatches for our IT engineers, you know, sort of was that soft touch between the people that are, you know, in the field and our customers. I was there for almost 11 years. After a few years as a service coordinator, I was promoted to the director of IT role. And in that role, I was sort of a virtual CTO for our customers. For some context, the company is a managed services provider, so we, you know, all of our customers outsource their IT to us, and so we had, you know, law firms, hedge funds, and PR firms, schools that relied on us to run their IT. And so I did that for a little bit, and then finally, in the last like 2 or 3 years there, we expanded some of our services into phone systems, audio video automation, home support as well for you know, high-end home installations. And so I took that under my belt as well. And fast forward into COVID, company was not doing too great, you know, like most companies, because of COVID. And so that started to prompt me to look into, you know, what else was out there. And then I found Policy Genius. And so I've been at Policy Genius now for almost 2 years. And yeah, it's been a great change because I'm focusing more on the IT needs of one business as opposed to, you know, over 30 in my last role. So it's allowed me to focus, and it's you know, it's a strategic role. You know, we partner with all of the different teams in our company, and, you know, talk about what their support needs are. You know, reaching alignment. You know, what does it mean to have successful support? You know, within the company. You know, innovating and installing new applications and new systems, making sure that they're properly protected. So we partner a lot with our InfoSec team on that. Building out new offices. You know, we have 2 brand new offices here in New York City and another in North Carolina. So that's really, you know, a gist of how I got here. Yeah.
That's awesome. And Rudy, I really commend you, because after being somewhere for 11 years, that must have been like your second home. So to make that pivot, especially at a time where everything else kind of felt like it was upside down, must have been a challenging transition, but it sounds like you handled that transition like a pro. So great story, great background. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you. Yeah.
course, of course. So going back to Madeline, what types of obstacles would you say you've had to overcome along the way as a Latina in this industry, in an industry that is very male heavy, and you don't see too many Latinos, to be quite honest. So what type of obstacles would you say you've had to face, if any?
Yeah, I think primarily my biggest obstacle or like things that I had to get through were um, just being different in the industry, right? When I joined Pinterest, I was like the only person that wasn't from the West Coast on my team. I was the only Latina engineer at the entire company out of like 600 plus engineers. So there was really no one like me. And then on top of that, you know, adding the fact that there was this new program to welcome non-traditional people from non-traditional tech backgrounds into tech. So then I also had that. And I remember always feeling like in the beginning, like, whoa, how am I going to catch up to all of these people who have at least 4 years of coding experience? I had almost one, who had amazing internships under their belts and also like had computer science degrees from the best schools. There was a ton of imposter syndrome and just feeling like I was never going to be able to catch up. Obviously, I was able to succeed in my role and like get promoted a few times, but I think a lot of that had to do with having like really great support and mentorship. So my mentor when I entered the company and it was the tech lead on Android. So she runs all of Android even till this day. She's a mom of women of color and just like a really awesome human who like walked me through or helped me think through those moments where I was just feeling like, whoa, I might fail at this. So I just spoke about like briefly about my quick journey into tech, but there was a lot of doubt along the way, right? Like I remember when I started coding, you're learning a new language, but you're also learning a new way of thinking. When you're building products, it's not really, you just have to think differently. And you have to learn to think that way. And that wasn't something that came naturally to me. And I was completely new, but diving headfirst into this coding program where I had to learn everything really, really fast. And there was a lot of doubt there. And I remember that what helped me get over that and think that I could catch up was also a mentor that I had met along the way, who was a fellow Latina who was at Google. And she was like, hey, you're really good, but you needed more experience to get even better and to feel confident. And she kind of like cheered me on. So I always say that the most important factor when you're facing challenges or is to have like a really amazing community and really awesome supportive people around you who you respect and who respect you too, and who can kind of help you climb out of that pit of doubt that you're in. Another challenging thing that happened to me actually during that time, right after I got converted to full-time at Pinterest, was that my manager, although he was really excited to have me on the team and converted me from a contractor to a full-timer, one day I asked him like, hey, when am I going to like, why do you keep giving me similar types of projects? I really want to get promoted and these projects aren't going to help me get promoted. And he was like, well, you know, you have to pay your dues. Like you you didn't go to Stanford like all of us did. You just like, he didn't understand that I also went to college and had student debt and wanted to get promoted and make more money. I was doing the same work as my colleagues, but he thought that I needed to catch up to them because I don't know, because I didn't have the same degree, but I was doing the exact same work for less pay. And I was like, you know, it was a really hard meeting, but I remember telling him like, what is the difference between what I'm doing and this person who's a level above me is doing? We're doing the exact same work. I see we have sprint boards where we plan our work and where we catch up every week and say what we've done. And I'm like, we're doing the exact same things. Nobody is helping me with this. So I feel like we're at the same level. Why can't I get promoted or get another project that can show that I'm ready for promotion? And I remember just there feeling like other people notice that I'm different. My manager, although I thought he was supportive, is willingly or intentionally holding me back. And then that made me realize like, oh, I need to advocate for myself. And I ended up getting promoted under a different manager, but I did get a significant raise that got me up to speed, or got me to the same place as my colleagues once I advocated for myself in that meeting and showed him like, these are the things that I'm doing. This is what my coworkers are doing, but I'm making like 20K less. Like, I need to catch up. And in the meeting, he actually disagreed with me, but 2 months later, when raises came around, he actually gave me the raise. And I think I was able to do that because I knew I had a lot of support at the company. And because by that point, I really, truly believed that I was a good engineer.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing that. And honestly, you said the exact things that I was thinking in terms of really being an advocate for yourself, even in those moments where we might feel that imposter syndrome or feel that self-doubt or, question, am I good enough? Am I good enough as my colleague who went to the top Ivy League? Or, it's really kind of a matter of sitting down with yourself and understanding like, yes, I have this skill. And yes, I am just as good despite being different, right? So I'm so happy that you were able to advocate for yourself and really get to that next level in your career. So thank you for sharing that. Andrea, the same question for you. What type of obstacles would you say you've had to overcome as a Latina in the tech world?
Yes, this is such a great question. And I think a lot of the obstacles that I personally encountered in my career came from a place of also a shared identity as a first generation Latina too. So I didn't really have a rule book. I mean, no one really does, when you start your career, but really important, just like milestones in your career that typically you would reach out to, maybe a mentor or a sponsor to help, navigate through, such as like salary negotiations, promotion cycles. Like that wasn't something that came easy for me just because I didn't have someone necessarily like I can easily, quickly, go ask this question to. So that really caused a couple of like obstacles in my career with, as Madeline, we share a similar experience, like it delayed, me advancing in my career because I didn't know how to like specifically go through, the motions of asking my manager, like, hey, I'm doing X amount of work. I'm like overperforming, in consideration of, my team. And I'm like doing all of this impactful work, but how do I self-advocate, in that sense? So all in all, I think, as Madeline mentioned, very much so like community and really leaning into finding sponsors that can be advocates for you, especially in senior leaders, is so beneficial, as you think through how to navigate those milestones throughout your career. And I think that other really just like obstacles I went through as well was code switching, which was huge, joining the industry, really not feeling that I was in a safe space where I can authentically show up as myself. And I had to, almost like put a mask on and mask who I was at the core of my being. So that was very tough, finding that balance of being able to really show up authentically as Andrea, as a Latina, as someone, that has such a diverse background in my career and maybe didn't follow, maybe a traditional route as everyone else. So I would say those two. And then one more to add was microaggressions. They're very real in the workplace. And you earlier on maybe have a harder time identifying what an actual microaggression is in the workplace. But once you do, it does take an impact on you. It takes a toll, on your confidence, on the way that, you feel that you're being perceived by others. And I would really say that that's something, consistently that you kind of have to like check yourself and really just like raise more awareness around, especially, in the DEI space, making sure that, you are fostering as leaders in an inclusive environment where people feel safe to be themselves, that they can show up and not feel, like they basically, I'm trying to find like the right word to say it. But yeah, basically like identifying them earlier on and making sure that you're addressing those head on as well. So I would say those three were the top ones.
Thank you for sharing that. I resonate so much with the showing up as your authentic self. I've had a couple of journeys in my career, and I often found that I was one version of myself outside of my workplace and another version of myself in my workplace. And while I appreciated both of them, I really wanted to find a space to like mesh those two worlds together. And I think not because we're here today, but Cedar has done a really great job of always encouraging our employees to be their truest and most authentic selves. And I think that is so important when you have employees from just a bunch of different backgrounds and diverse walks of life. It's so important to give them a space to kind of be who they truly are while still being stellar at what they do. So thank you for sharing that, because I think it's such an important thing to highlight, for sure. And Rudy, again, last but not least, I'm sorry, I'll start with you next time. An obstacle that you feel you've encountered in the tech world.
Yeah, sure. I don't think it's an obstacle unique to the tech world, but my family moved here when I was 17, and so I was going into my senior year of high school, and we were in the middle of this process of becoming, naturalized or documented, permanent residents. And so I graduated high school and started to apply to colleges and got accepted to a few, and I was really excited about that. But naturally, because this process takes years, and it's this, it moves like a snail, and I wasn't eligible for financial aid, right off the bat. And so really my only option was just to wait. And so I didn't really get into going to college as soon as I would have liked. Was eventually able to get in there once we were documented and everything was solidified. But naturally, that holds you back a little bit in terms of like having access to resources and things like that. And I think that definitely gave me a slow start, and having some success into going to schools and kicking off my career earlier than I would have liked. And similar to what Andrea said, there's realities behind how we get along and just interact with colleagues who are of our different backgrounds, right? I think that living abroad for so many years, you get used to customs and way of behaving and way of communicating that are just different. And so those things are, I think, noted initially. So it's that's why it's great to celebrate diversity, and it's nice that Cedar's doing it, because having people of similar backgrounds in the workforce just makes you feel like you belong and you have someone to talk to, and you build that camaraderie, and that stuff is important. I think it's big part of success. So I think I would attribute the two main obstacles are around that. It took me several years, I think, to feel like everything was coming together and start to feel like you're belonging, and I would say that was it.
Thank you so much. And Rudy, you actually segued us into the next component of our panel, which is kind of more cultural context, right? I think what you said really is going to kind of lead into this very well. How have you integrated representing your culture at work and your professional life? How do you feel that has benefited your career? So again, Andrea, going back to bringing your most true and authentic self, I'm just gonna go in order again. Sorry, Rudy, don't kill me. Madeline, how do you feel you've integrated your culture into your career so far, and how do you continue to find ways to do so?
I guess the biggest one has been like starting the Latine ERG at Pinterest in 2016 and running that for a few years. I got some amazing opportunities out of that. I met some amazing people, and also, actually, for this last promotion, there needed to be a letter of recommendation by someone on the leadership team that showcased your impact across the company as a leader. And the person who wrote my recommendation was our general counsel, so a Latina woman on the executive team who was also like my partner in launching the Latina ERG at Pinterest. And I knew that if she wrote my recommendation, there was no way they could deny my promotion. And that it really did showcase impact across the company, not just within engineering. So that was really awesome. And also just, I've gone to so many places, and there have been articles written about me in Univision and Telemundo. And I think that that was all like part of, because of the work that I was doing at Pinterest, and also through other initiatives like Tecnolochicas, which is a program that helps young girls in middle school get exposed to technology and coding. And also not just the young girls, but also their parents, because we all know that if your parents encourage you to pursue something, you're more likely to actually try it. And since the journey into tech can be so hard and lonely, and especially in the beginning, it's really important to get the parents involved and to really expose them to what's possible for their kids if they pursue this industry. So that has been amazing work to do, but also has impacted my career in so many ways, because I feel like when you teach something, that's when you truly learn it yourself too, and it reinforces what you know and what you don't know. I was going to say something about, I think, Andrea, you mentioned something about community and leaders, like connecting with leaders. And something that I didn't know at the beginning of my career that I know now, and would have been really helpful to know back then, in terms of getting a sponsor, someone to sponsor you on the leadership team. So leaders, like executive leaders, don't have a lot of insight into what's really going on at the company, right? Like most people don't want to tell them the bad stuff because they're trying to impress them, and oh, everything's fine. You know, their direct management team, they're like, we have everything under control, even if they don't. And so they have zero knowledge about what's really happening, how people are feeling, if people are thinking of leaving the company. They just don't have any insight. And so you can be that insight, right? If there's someone on the executive team who you really want to get mentorship from, I'm sure a lot of them would be willing to mentor you in exchange for, like, give me a real pulse of what's going on at the company. You all have that insight because you talk to everyone at the company. You don't have to give any names. You don't have to say which teams people are from, but you can honestly say, hey, I've noticed a lot of people are thinking about leaving this org because there's a lot of instability. There's no way that their direct that reports to them will tell them like, oh my God, all these people are leaving, because then that reflects poorly on them. So if you can give them insight into what's going on, how people are feeling, give them a pulse on the company, and meet with them maybe once a month, that's a really great way to have a sponsor and a mentor and someone who you can talk to throughout your time at the company. And I heard this from like 3 leaders and I didn't know that this was even something that they would be interested in, having a direct relationship with someone who isn't on the leadership team, just to get that information. And then another one is, if you're trying to get access to the executives, another great way is to be a lead on the any of the employee resource groups. So, you know, by default, you get to work with a lot of them on projects, on initiatives, and on like different, I guess, initiatives that you wouldn't otherwise have spoken to them for. So if you have a chance to lead something at the company in any way, maybe an employee resource group, I think that's a great way to not only get visibility, but also get to have a direct relationship with some of the leadership team. Like maybe you never talk to the CEO, but if you're the lead for an employee resource group, you're going to have to talk to the CEO sometimes, and they will know who you are because you're leading such great big initiatives that affect the lives of all employees.
Thank you so much, Madeline. And that's such a great suggestion. And we actually have several members of our executive leadership team here, including our CEO, Florian Otto. So I think it's so good to hear that firsthand suggestion. So thank you so much. Andrea, same question for you. How have you integrated representing your culture in your professional life?
For sure. So I definitely feel like our culture often shapes like our values and expectations as they relate to many parts of our lives, including our job and our career. So for me, it was like taking a deeper look within and taking my Latinidad and turning that into my superpower and how I showed up in the workplace. And really what I mean that is like taking up space loud. So this included, me raising my hand to lead programming and events centered around the community and help drive cultural awareness of who we are and be in a position as a leader to share what the concerns are with senior leaders, as Madeline mentioned. And then the second piece of that is, I mentioned being first generation, and as isolating as it can be being the first at times, I was the first like Latina in my team, and I was often the only woman on my team. I really firmly believe that you can't be what you can't see. So in many ways, when you are in a position when you are the first, you can serve as the motivation and inspiration for someone that maybe doesn't think that they can be in a position to do a similar thing, maybe be in a similar career, like a role. And then really just like using your influence to create pathways for people to follow, being a mentor to others once you have achieved that level of success or that level of experience throughout your career. So really, when I think through of it, like my North Star has always been being the person I needed at the beginning of the career. And I see this in so many ways that, people I have met along the way and built such like meaningful connections with, being able to open pathways for them to also, be able to be in these opportunities. I use the example of being a big sister. And now, my little sister actually works in tech. And she has a lot of, that just knowledge now because I had to go through that experience, for her to know how to navigate the pathways of landing a job in tech. So really just like think through of like, we don't sometimes see the impact that we have, even when, we move into a promotion or, when we see others talking about what their journey looked like, but it can be so significant for someone that maybe doesn't see that for themselves. So just know that it does speak volumes when you're able to do that as well.
I have to say, I jotted down that sentence that you said, being the person that you needed, and you can't be what you can't see. That resonated with me, and I'm sure resonates with so many people joining us here today. Really, being that leader, being that shining example, even when it's hard, even when you have the imposter syndrome that Madeline mentioned earlier. You kind of got to fake it till you make it some days, and then eventually you realize that you really are at a place where you can establish yourself as a strong voice. So thank you. I mean, I have, you'll see me going away every time I am jotting down these notes in real time because I think they're such great little tokens. So Rudy, same question for you. How have you integrated representing your culture in your day-to-day life in your profession?
Yeah, sure. So that's a good question. I think Policy Genius has, really facilitated that because they do a great job at, taking, Latinx History Month, for example, and doing as much as they, as a company can to promote, diversity. So as an example, this past month, we did a Slack takeover for our music, book, team photos channels, cooking channels. And it was just, Latinx stuff posted there all month. So it's an opportunity to post photos of my favorite, dishes from the Dominican Republic that I enjoy. I can't cook it, but I love eating it. And it's great to see people who are from different backgrounds say, yeah, I've had that, and it was delicious, and tell me about how your mom makes it. And similarly for books and music and pop culture, it was just a great way to put it all out there. So I would say it's that, and then also PG does interviews and highlights that they throw out every couple of weeks where they pick out some Latinx folks around the company and ask them questions about what your experience has been like, very similar to this panel. So that gave a lot of people the opportunity to speak about what it's been like at PG, their careers, and speak a little bit about home and what their experience was like back in their respective countries.
That's awesome. And we have a couple of people chiming into the chat that are saying that they love that idea. So tune in next year for a Slack takeover, Cedar. We love that idea so much. That sounds so fun. And so I know that a couple of you had mentioned your specific cultural background. So Madeline, Rudy, I know you're both from the Dominican Republic. Also, what cultural values would you say have brought success to your career, right? What specifically about your culture, what's been ingrained in you, have you been able to bring in real time and kind of embrace in your career? Let's start with Andrea.
For sure. So I think definitely the top one for me would be perseverance. In the example of, so my family is, our family has a lot of small business owners. So my entire life, I have seen, them really just like bootstrap and start their own businesses. And, there's a lot of obstacles that you encounter as a small business owner, along the journey and path. And in each one of those examples, almost finding this resilience to continue going despite the obstacles. I think that's like a huge cultural value that helps, drive me in my career, kind of just seeing my family, who came to this country. I also didn't share, but my family is from El Salvador and Nicaragua. And for some of you that may not know, Nicaragua is one of the poorest places in the Western Hemisphere. So I think just seeing that example of my family coming from really nothing to building what they have now, and me being in a position where I have much more resources available at my disposal. And even when things get, the going gets rough, and when I want to throw the towel in, just finding that perseverance within, and that resilience to really be like, it's okay, it's a bad day, not a bad life. And finding, that courage to go forward and kind of just like give it another shot. So I think definitely along my career, that has been very present, and staying resilient and perseverance coming out, from a very bad moment as well.
Absolutely. I think that that's something that can resonate across most Latino cultures, is that perseverance, is that, kind of being in a new place and picking yourself up by the bootstraps. So thank you for sharing that for sure. Madeline?
I thought we were going to go to Rudy next.
I'm switching it up. I'm keeping it interesting.
Yeah, I think one thing that has hurt my career a little bit, especially in the beginning, was being like too quiet, or like being too heads down and in the weeds. Like, because we're such hard workers, we think like you have to work really, really, really hard all the time. And you do have to work really hard, but you also have to work smart, right? And you have to like bring visibility to the work that you're doing. And I knew how to work really hard, but I didn't know how to give my projects and my work that visibility. I didn't know how to talk about it to people. And like, I think that was holding me back a lot, where some of my other colleagues were always like on Slack or in meetings, like, this is what I did, and were super eager to share their work and to present it. I was like scared to. I was like, I don't want people to think I'm showing off, or like too worried about what might go wrong if I did present it, like somebody would find a problem or something. And yeah, I think that pride, having pride and displaying my work to people, and proudly like talking about my accomplishments. I think that's something that as Latinos, we don't do enough. We don't talk about our accomplishments. We like, my mom would also tell me like, oh, don't be too like don't show off too much or whatever. And that's not something we should be telling our peers or our children. Like, they should be proud of the work that they do. Obviously not like boastful about it or whatever, but we should all be proudly display the work that we do and the contributions that we can make to the world and our skills. And I think that once I got better at that and communicating my accomplishments and the work that I'm doing, my career started to take off.
Absolutely. And I like that you highlighted something. It was something really, it sounds like something that you had to unlearn, right? Something that was part of your culture and something that, you maybe grew up with and heard your whole life, and something that you actually had to, kind of disengage with as you got a little bit older and more mature in your professional career. So sometimes that's important too. We're instilled with things that, we take with us, and sometimes we're like, maybe I can do it this way. And, it'll work out a lot better for me. So thank you for sharing an example of that. And Rudy, again, last but not least.
Yeah, sure. I think the biggest thing that it's helped me with is empathy. I think having a different background really helps fine tune, reading the mood that people of different backgrounds may be in, or understanding the struggles that they might have, and especially when they come to you for help. I think especially as a people manager, it's important to be empathetic and see how you can help. And I think, again, having those different experiences gives you a good tool set to get a good read on that, and make sure that your team is it's in good shape and they feel like they're supported. And then the other thing it's helped a lot in is problem solving. I think people of different backgrounds, and this isn't unique to just Latinx folks, but people from all across the world, they have different experiences and how they solve problems. And I think that type of diversity really helps in how we get our heads together and bring some good ideas to the table. So I would say those are the two primary things that I think it's really helped out for in my career.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. We had a couple more questions, but we are running out of time, which makes me so sad because I can chat with you guys forever. You each have such incredible and unique stories. I wanted to leave some time for people to pop in questions into our chat, and I see that there's some sentiments in there. Thank you for sharing some of your similar experiences to our Cedarians who are watching. So I wanted to give you a little bit of an opportunity to kind of brag, going to what Madeline was saying, brag a little bit about anything that you may be working on, anything that you're proud of. Madeline, like you mentioned earlier, I know that you've been involved in a couple of publications and news spots. So this is your chance to plug yourself and really take it home.
Are we starting with me or?
Yes, yes.
Oh, actually, I don't really have anything to plug right now. Honestly, I'm getting back into work after taking a year off to take care of my newborn. But one thing that I wanted to share is that your community is everything, especially at work. I've met some of my best friends at Pinterest, and I will say that building things and bringing ideas to life and creating spaces that we wish existed is so much more fun when you have awesome people to do it with. So definitely try to bring your friends into the company and try to meet people at the company who can become your partners in all of these initiatives. Everything is so much more fun when you have people that you can count on. And also, we share a lot. I have so many friends at Pinterest and we share everything with each other. So I actually read on your website that you are all transparent about salaries, I think, but that's not something that we had at Pinterest before. It is public now. And before when it was time for promotions or for salary increases, I would get together with all of my girlfriends and guys too at Pinterest, especially white men, because for some reason they do end up getting paid more than us a lot of the time. And we would all get together in a room and talk about where our salaries were, what our levels were. And we didn't know if it was if Pinterest would look down upon that. They didn't care, actually. So we kept it a small group and we would all share our salaries, what we were working on, what our levels were, what it took for us to get promoted at the company, what our managers were helping us with. So and not helping us with, your manager, your direct leadership team is so important to your progression at a company, right? If you don't have a supportive manager, you can be an incredible contributor and not get promoted and be stuck and think you're not great. I've had amazing people that I work with who thought that they were not amazing because their leader didn't believe in them, but everybody else in the company believed in them and they stayed stuck at a level because of this individual. So it's really important to have people across the company who you can talk to about your situation, who you can really share notes with about what their leaders are doing with them and their experience at the company. Because sometimes people are having a horrible experience at a company and it's not because the company is horrible, it's because the person directly leading them hasn't been trained to do their job well. So
I think those are great gems, Madeline. Absolutely. Really quickly, I do apologize. I want to get over to Andrea and to Rudy as well, just so that we could hear some final thoughts from them as well. But thank you so much. Those are some gems.
Yeah, I can go ahead and share. So At Twitter, we're definitely on a journey to become the world's most inclusive, diverse, equitable, and accessible company. And with that being said, 2 days ago, we released our Q3 idea report, which brings a huge spotlight and focus on accessibility, which is great because we're entering National Disability Employment Awareness Month. And for many of you that maybe don't know, 15% of the world's population lives with a disability. So it's definitely an ongoing conversation in the space right now. I highly encourage, if this is something of interest to you, there's a lot of best practices and all amazing work that we're doing as a team collectively to help drive more efforts on the accessibility front. And our BRGs are our soul at Twitter. So there's a lot of great work that we've implemented over the last year and a half, such as salary transparency, compensating our BRG chairs, establishing formal leadership structures, which I'm very proud to help spearhead and be a part of as well. So definitely check it out. And yeah, I hope that's of interest for some as well.
That's awesome. And I'm sure there was a lot of work that you and your team put into that. So congratulations on having that release. That sounds great. And Rudy?
Yeah, so this year at Posse Genius, our focus is maturity. We have a great team and we have a bunch of cool things that we do, but really it's bringing maturity. And so in our service management pillar, we've implemented service level agreements just to, again, bring alignment to our stakeholders and understand what the response time should be for an urgent support ticket or something low priority, tracking our resolution, tracking our metrics for our team so that they understand, how well they're performing. We're also, really big this year on proactive quality. So we're implementing a patching system that is actually in progress right now, so that we can deploy patches to folks, let them know when their computers are ready to update, give them options for when they want to postpone that reboot for, so make sure our assets are well protected. And then likewise, also tracking our assets and putting in a lifecycle policy around them so that rather than waiting for 5 years for your laptop to die on you, we're proactively reaching out to people and saying, hey, your laptop is ready to be replaced. It's 3 years old. Let's get you a new one. So just making sure that people are running steady and that they're well supported along the way. So that's what we're up to.
That's amazing. So it sounds like you have a lot on your plate. So that's amazing, and wishing you all the best of luck on those upcoming initiatives. I want to thank you all for joining us today. I'm going to have Christine, for those who are still on, I'm going to have Christine put up our slide with some of your contact information. So if anybody here wants to add any of our amazing panelists on LinkedIn, we're going to post up their LinkedIn information. If we can't right now, we will definitely send out this deck to do so. But I want to thank you all so much. This was such an amazing chat, and hopefully this will be one of many to come in the years to come. So thank you guys again.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you guys.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.